Hey, thanks for stopping by. This is John from GuitarAttack, and today we're going to build a Saga Guitar Kit. The purpose of this video is to show you some of the techniques and some of the tools you'll need to build your very own guitar from a kit. Why do we do this? Well, first of all, it's a very fun project, and we think you could really enjoy it with your family or a friend to put your own guitar together. You can learn a great deal about guitars, not only about how to set them up, but how they're built and the construction techniques. And finally, it gives you the chance to build a unique guitar that you won't find at a local guitar shop. For example, here is one that we built 12 years ago when we first started dealing with Saga guitars at GuitarAttack, and we still use it, and it's still a great playing guitar. The one thing we want to remind you of is safety is always first. If you are uncomfortable working with tools or working with some of the techniques that we have, don't be afraid to ask somebody to help you that knows how to do it, because we don't want you to get hurt building your first guitar kit. Which guitar kit did we get? We said it's a Saga. We ordered this one from Amazon last week and it came, and looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? So the next thing we're going to do is get into the kit, and we'll show you what comes in the box. This is the first thing that you have to do. So we'll take the top off. Probably the most important thing that you're going to find in the box are the instructions. The instructions is sort of this gatefold affair, and it walks you through each one of the steps. And we always, even if you watch the video, we ask that you follow along in the instructions to make sure you're doing the right thing. Don't lose these. Wrapped up in a packing container is a Saga neck. It's a rosewood neck. It's got sort of vintage style frets on it. It does have a nut installed, and you can see that it has an unshaped headstock. You can see the difference. We may have to do a little fret work on this, but I'm going to show you how to do that. But this is the neck. This is a very important piece as well. The next assembly we have is the body, and this is a multi-piece. I think it's basswood. It feels like it's pretty light. It's actually a pretty light body. It's not bad. All the holes are already drilled for you, but we're going to have to kind of modify a couple of things. And you can see that the pick guard's already installed as well, and it looks like it's been trimmed a little bit, but there's just 2 of the screws are put on here. I think it's 11 screws, but you got 2 tone controls and a volume control, 3 pickups, and a 5-position switch. And this switch is bent a little bit. I'm going to bend that back. There we go. See, we already made our first repair. So, not bad, but we need to put a finish on it. Okay, now here's where the magic happens right here. This is our hardware. I'm going to set this out of the way. We're going to go through each one of these pieces so you can see what they are. Do not lose these pieces. Again, do not lose any of these pieces. Keep your bag. First thing we have is a guitar cord. You may need that when you later, and I've got a bunch of these laying around. You may use it for something else. Believe it or not, you have a Saga decal too to put on the headstock. You may or may not want to use this. For example, for this one, we used a water slide decal kit from Testers to make our own, but we'll talk about that later. You have some guitar strings. Me personally, these are some pretty low-end guitar strings. If you have a guitar shop close to you, my recommendation is to go down and get some Ernie Ball strings, because they're my favorite, but also I think that you'd be better off playing with some good quality guitar strings. This little bag right here has 2 things in it. It's called a tremolo claw, which fits in the back of the guitar, and the jack cup, which is this piece right here. We've got that, which is very important. Here is the bridge assembly with the tremolo arm. That's this right here. this is a very important bag right here, because what it is you've got the tremolo springs that go on the back of the guitar. You've got the 2 screws that hold in the tremolo claw, several other big screws. There's just all kinds of stuff in here. So here is a very important bag, and it's in your inventory. Here is the neck plate, which goes right here, and the 4 screws that hold it in. And also in this there are 2 Allen wrenches, and these 2 Allen wrenches are required to adjust the neck, and the small one is used to adjust the bridge. Here we go. These are this is some other hardware, some tuner bushings, some little screws that hold the tuners on the headstock, some string trees, and these are the strap buttons. That's where you use your strap, and right here where you hook your strap to when you stand up, rock out. Here's the trim plate. It goes over the back where the spring assembly is located. And here are your tuners. There's 6 tuners in here. They go right up here on the headstock. So what I recommend you do when you look at all these parts is, if you look at your instructions, right here is a sort of a pictogram of everything that's in the box. Look at that as you go through everything. And also over here, there is a checklist of each one. Now the problem is, anytime you look at a checklist, you're not sure exactly what they are. For example, what is a string claw? Well, if you've been around guitars for a while, you kind of know what it is, but you may not. But you can see over here on the pictogram, our little picture, that the string claw is G, and that's what it looks like right there. So you kind of have to cross-reference the two, and when you go through, just make sure that all your parts are there, because if you don't have your parts, you can't put the guitar together, and it never fails. It always happens the worst possible time that you realize that you don't have the parts. This is learned from hard experience on building guitars, that normally guitar builders want to jump right in to put in a really cool finish on their guitar so other people can really like the guitar and think about how cool it is. For example, this one has a nitrocellulose lacquer surf green, sort of a vintage looking finish on it. But before you do that, you have to make sure that the guitar plays and all the parts work properly, because if you don't, what you'll find is once you get that really nice finish on the guitar, that's the time that you don't want to find out that you did something improperly or didn't put a part on, and you wind up scratching that brand new paint job. So we're going to put the guitar together, make sure it plays, and then we're going to take it back apart before we put a finish on it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is get the guitar ready to put together, but we're going to have to take this pick guard off. So, taking a Phillips head screwdriver, we're going to remove the 2 screws that came on it from the factory, and we're going to put the 2 screws in a little Ziploc bag so we don't lose them. And you can get these little bags at any sort of hobby store, or even at, for example, Walmart. And they're relatively inexpensive, and I recommend that if you're going to do any kind of guitar work, you need to buy some of these. We're going to take that and put it in our bag. So when we take this off, you'll see that the body's already routed for all 3 of the pickups and the controls. It's all routed, and all the holes are already drilled. And our pick guard has 2 connections, or 3 actually, that we're going to have to do. We have the main output here, and the ground, and you can see the quick disconnects. Now they are color coded, and we're going to hook that up in a few minutes, but right now I just wanted you to take a look and that all the controls are complete, and you won't have to do any soldering on this job. We're going to set the pick guard to the side here. The first thing we're going to do is get the body ready. We're going to do the body first, and we're going to put the neck on. The first thing, it's going to take a little bit of time to do. The first thing we have to put on is we have to put the bridge on. You won't need this right now. That's actually the trim bar. We're going to take the bridge out. We're going to save our bags because we're recycled. We'll go ahead and take our Sharpie, the right bridge on here. It's pretty cool. It's pretty nice, pretty well done. It's got a little piece of cardboard under there, and you just pull that out, and it's going to sit in here like this. Now we get our screws to put it in. There's 6 screws in here, and we're going to cut this. You'll see a lot of guys, even on the old Strats, they'll just use 2 screws on the outside of this, and what's going to happen is we'll put these screws in, and this will be able to pivot, so we can use this to lower the pitch of the strings. I'll demonstrate that later when we get to the playing portion. But this has to be the first thing you need to do is make sure that the holes line up before you start screwing the bridge in. Easiest way to do it to start, obviously with a screwdriver, but go to a craft store or an organic store or something like that. I think, you know, even a Whole Foods or something like that, and or a store like that, and buy some beeswax. Beeswax is perfect to help these screws go into this body. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of beeswax and just rub it on the threads of that screw. Get it started, and we'll install them like that. Alright, the last screw's going in. Alright, and you can see it's tightened down quite a bit. We can loosen it up so you'll get some movement on it, and that's what you want. We're going to flip this over and complete the bridge. As you can see here, there's a cavity in the back. Normally the cavity is covered with this nice plastic plate. We're not going to put it on right now, but this is that the plate covers this up, and it allows you to thread the string, put the strings on that go through what is known as a tremolo block here. The strings go through this block out the front and of course up the neck. So what we have to install now is known as a tremolo claw, and this is what it looks like. So you're saying, hey, what's that wire? Well, believe it or not, this is the ground wire, and it has to be attached to the electronics of the guitar, because if it's not, you're going to have an incredible hum, and the guitar will never play right. So we'll take this, and you can see there's a hole right here. The wire, the ground wire, goes through there, comes out right here on the front. You can see where it comes out. What we're going to do now is get the 2 tremolo claw screws. We'll get a couple of springs out while we're at it. We're going to have to cut this. So we have 2 wood screws that we're going to cut off here to hold the claw in the back of the guitar. Again, going to make sure we've got the right screwdriver. Need something that's got a little back. This is kind of tough, so what you have to do is, my recommendation is just get the claw out here where you can get the screw started. And you're wanting the screw to generally go into the back of the guitar sort of slanted downward, because you're going to have to be able to adjust it after you get the springs on it, and I'll show you that in just a second. This is a critical piece right here, folks, so you can't rush this. Now generally you'll see the claw, the screws don't have to be all the way down to the body. And you can see that right here, that there's some play in that. And the reason being is we're going to put some springs on here. Now here's a safety tip for you. If you're ever going to scratch your new guitar, it will probably be during this procedure, okay? Take it from experience, and take it from somebody who's worked on a lot of guitars. If you're ever going to do it, this is going to be it. What we're going to do is we're going to start out, and this is a neat little tool. Got this from Stu Mack, and it's a tremolo spring puller. And some of you who have done some fishing may recognize it. It's actually very, very similar to a hook remover also. And you can use the same thing. That what you've got is you've got a place to hold on your finger, just a few inches, and it's got a little hook here at the end that's going to grab the tremolo spring. I recommend when you do this, either wear some safety glasses or put on your ballistic sunglasses, because the spring can go crazy. So what you want to do is take the spring with the hook down, and we're going to pull it until we seat it in this hole right here. So that's what the first spring looks like, okay? We're just going to put 3 on for right now. Stevie Ray Vaughan used 5. I think Hendrix used 5. A lot of guys just used 2. I think Van Halen used 3. And you'll see all kinds of permutations. Guys will take them and put them, but we're just going to do 3 straight strings here. Springs, rather. So that's what it should look like. And like we said before, the reason that you want to leave a little bit of play in the tremolo claw is so you can tighten up the springs later. And we'll see when we get the strings on why that comes into play. Next thing we're going to do is hook up put the pick guard back on. We need to make sure that the pick guard and the pickups and everything work with the guitar. Again, referring to our instructions, make sure that our color coding is correct. Alright, the first thing we're going to do here is open up our pick guard screws, because we're going to need these. Now we got the pick guard screws out. We're going to put these in here. We're going to save a couple out for right now. And you can see, written pick guard. We're going to open up our jack cup, and you can see that it's got a hot and a ground, a white and a black. We're going to thread it through the little hole in here, because this is where we're going to plug our guitar in. And just to make sure, the white is the hot. And you say, John, why are you doing this before you finish the guitar? Just primarily because of what's happening right now. Depending on the way that the jack is configured, it may not fit, and you're going to have to turn it like that. So I use my wire pliers to break the torque on that, so I can spin it around here and make sure that it fits. Might have to play with this for a few minutes. See, there we go. Make sure the holes line up. And with the cup in there, I'm just going to turn this. And I can see that it's, once I turn it, that it is in the proper position. And now it fits. So, again, a little beeswax. So we know that hot is the white one, so we'll just plug this in. The black is the ground, so we'll plug that in. And the string ground is the orange, and it goes to the yellow. We'll plug that in, so there, we should have a connection. Okay, I took a little bit of electrical tape to check to cover our connections, just for the near term. That the kit actually comes with some heat shrink, and I don't know if you want to use that or not, but we're going to take this and put the pick guard in here, if we can get it in. There. Just make sure it's snug down. We'll just put a couple of pick guard screws in it from our bag, just to hold it down while we check the guitar. Make sure it plays okay. Normally I will just put these two in the back, because we may need to move it around up here. So I'm going to take my little amplifier, plug it in, turn it on, using a tuning fork. The back pickup, the middle pickup, and the front pickup all work. as does the volume control. So we've got some good electronics. And that's all we're going to do to the body right now. Next, we're going to move on to the neck. A couple of things we're going to do. We're not going to put all of the parts on the neck, but we're going to put just enough on there to make sure that the neck is in good shape and we don't have any problems with it before we put a finish on it. One thing you can do is, if you have a steel ruler, you can check and make sure that the neck is generally straight before we put it on. Because what happens is that if you've got a bow or anything wrong with it, as soon as you put the strings on, it's going to cause it to this end to come up, this end to come up, and it'll look kind of like a half pipe. First thing we're going to do is get our bushings out. If I can open up this bag. Now these bushings go in each one of these holes. Now here's something interesting about this. We can already see that maybe the holes are a little bit too big because of this happens. All the bushings come falling out. So we may have to use some glue or a piece of tape to hold the bushings in. Why do you need a bushing? Well, you'll see on the tuner that the shaft tends to move around a little bit. So in this particular instance right here, what it does is it holds the shaft that the string's going to be wrapped around. So we're just going to place our tuners on the neck. They should line up, sort of like you would see the old Fender F tuners. You can see there's quite a lot of play in here. This is there's one thing that you may want to replace with your Saga guitar is probably these tuners. So we have them in place. We're going to take our screws. Now, my recommendation here is to be extremely easy on these screws because they can break, and if you break one and one breaks off in the wood, you're going to have some trouble getting it out. Okay, let's go ahead and put the screws in. We have the tuners installed on the neck. They're not all the way, the screws aren't all the way in because we are going to take it back apart. And this is what I was referring to on the bushings. The bushings are supposed to press into the neck, and you can see how they keep it from moving. Well, at the factory, somebody drilled the holes a little bit too big, and the bushings come right off. So we're not going to glue them in right now or even put any tape around them. We'll wait till we get the finish done to do that. So the next thing we're going to do is put the neck on the body. And for this, we'll need the neck plate, and we'll need the 4 screws that hold it on. Before we do anything, we want to make sure that the neck will fit into the cavity, and it kind of does. Kind of looks like a guitar now. See this? Plate goes on. Get some beeswax. We're going to do all 4. I start and do a crisscross pattern. Once the screws are started in the neck, switch to the next one. But you can move your hand up so you don't jam your hand or your arm with a screwdriver. Just what we want to do right now is just get them snug. We don't want to tighten them down very much. If there's anything that I see in my guitar repair life is that people over tighten screws, especially on a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, and when you over tighten them, it tends to make it where you strip them out. So now what do? We're going to take our strings that came with the guitar, and I think we're going to throw them away. It might be worth just sacrificing a good set of strings right now for this guitar. And what we're going to do, these are my favorite strings. We are not Ernie Ball endorsers, but we probably should be because of the number of strings that we've sold over the years. But these go from 9 to 42, and if you go into a guitar store, you can just say, I want some pink slinkies, and these are the ones. These are some of the most popular strings you can get. But before we put all of the strings on the guitar, what we're going to do is put the two E strings on, the small E string and the big E string, and we're going to set our bridge up using a little trick that I'm going to teach you. Before we put the strings on, I'm going to use one of my business cards, and I'm going to mark the radius, there we go, of the neck with a pencil. Use a pencil, don't use a Sharpie, and this will help us set the height of the bridge and make a little radius gauge. This just keeps you from having to buy them, and that's just about perfect. So what we've got here is I'll be able to put this on top of the strings, and I can tell immediately which strings I need to raise and which I need to lower based on the radius of the neck. We're going to take our 42 and our 9, which are our two E strings, and put them on the guitar. Again, it goes through the bottom, up through the top. We're going to take a bushing and just kind of stick it on there so it doesn't rip the... Right, what we're doing now is we're going to align the neck, make sure the neck's going to move, because you can see on these guitars the neck can go left and right. So you need to make sure that, and you use these two outer strings to make sure that the neck is in proper relationship to the strings. And the only reason we do this, is to make sure that our setup is correct before we finish the guitar. The easiest way to do this is just to look down the length of the guitar and see if we have enough movement to align it. And you can see right there is just about right to where you've got a little bit more string on the treble side than you do on the bass side. So we'll just lean the guitar up, tighten down the bolts with our screwdriver, check the alignment again. You can use a clamp for this too, and I've done that. Some that are so far out that you have to use a clamp to hold it down to tighten it up. This one's not too bad, actually. We'll go ahead and tighten her down using a crisscross pattern on the screws. Great. So at this point what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put the rest of the strings on and see how it sets up. Okay, we've got our guitar strung up. Got a whole set of strings on it. Feel pretty good about it. We were able to tune it up. The neck, it all seems like it's holding pretty good. Normally what I like to do with these guitars is leave the strings on them at pitch for about a day before I take them apart, just to make sure that the neck and everything's okay on it. So when we start looking at it, we're going to use our card that we built earlier to look and see what the strings look like. And we can use this card, you can see with a little cutout that's based on the neck, and we can see how the general lay of the bridge is. We want to set the intonation and do the setup per the instructions on our website at GuitarAttack.com. But the main things that we're looking at right here is just to make sure that the guitar is playable, and to set the pickup heights, we can do that. Always use an American nickel coin, set it on top of the pickups, and raise the pickup until it reaches the string. I've had people say that's not very scientific, and I say, well, you're absolutely correct. It is not scientific, but you'll find that the height is just about right, even with humbuckers and single coils. So always use a nickel 5-cent coin. So we've got the guitar together, and start looking at it. We use our little practice amp to see if everything is working okay, and we see if we have any buzzes or anything we need to fix. So now we're looking at the guitar. We can check our card, make sure that, and see how close our alignment is on the bridge. As we say in the GuitarAttack intonation guide, and you can see how the setup is, you can use 2 credit cards. This is our Kmart Rewards card, and we've got it together with 2. And that's normally about the height of the string that you want at the 12th fret. So we're a little bit high, but we can bring it down. The other thing that we want to check is to make sure that our neck is straight, and we can do that by holding down on the first fret our E, coming down here to the 17th fret, and just kind of touching the string with our ring finger on our left hand, and we can see if there's a lot of play in the string, it means that the neck is not very straight and has a bow in it. This one's actually pretty straight. No dead frets. So we've got a playable guitar right now. So where do we go from here? We want to make sure that we set the intonation like we said on GuitarAttack.com, and we want to make sure that our action and all is as good as we can get it before we finish it. But right now we do have a good guitar. One quick thing that you can always do and check and make sure and see how your intonation is do a harmonic on the 12th fret, then fret the 12th fret. Sounds like it's a little sharp. So remember, if it's sharp, you make the bridge saddle go back, and if it's flat, it goes forward. Easiest way to do this is if you have an iPhone, if you have a tuner app, you can set your intonation. It's all explained on GuitarAttack. But just to make sure that you get your intonation, because this is very important on a Stratocaster guitar. When you set the intonation, you have to use a screwdriver to adjust the saddles. Think about that if you've got a really nice paint job on your guitar and you've got a screwdriver that you're doing this, next thing you know, you can dig in. So between that and adjusting your springs, those are probably the two most common ways to destroy your finish. So I recommend that you do that before we continue. And our next step is we're going to let this sit overnight, see how it works, and then we're going to take it apart and start finishing it. So the next phase is on to the finish. All right, here we are at Lowe's, and we're going to pick up some things to finish our guitar. One thing that's very important is picking the right kind of sandpaper. If you want to when you sand your guitar down, you'll want to. But what I found is I would never go less than about 220 on a guitar, because the scratches are so deep when you get with a higher grit of sandpaper that they're very difficult to get out. You'll find on the Saga guitars also that there's a very, very thick sealer on there, and if you scratch that sealer, it's very, very difficult to get the scratches out when you get your finish done. So these are really good. The 3M sandblaster paper is really good, and I really like this a lot. One thing you're going to find is a lot of people use steel wool on guitars, and I recommend you don't, because the steel sheds from steel wool and it sticks to your pickups and you can never hardly get it off. So I recommend these white pads from 3M. They're called finishing pads, and the gray ones also. They are fantastic replacements for steel wool, and I really like to use them both on my guitars. Okay, here we are in the paint aisle. We're looking at all the different paints we're going to use for our guitar. We're trying to figure out exactly what color we wanted. We like the red, we like Fiesta red. We're sort of looking at these. Here's a really good one right here. This is Sunrise red. So we figure that the body's going to look really nice in this color right here. So what do we do with the neck? Come around here and I'll show you. We want a clear lacquer for the neck, because we're going to clear coat the factory coat on the Saga, so we're going to use some Valspar lacquer paint. This is acrylic lacquer. We're going to put this on there, and buff up and play really nice. It'll feel just like a really high-end guitar. So with these two, we're going to do the body with the red and the neck with the clear, and we should be ready to go with that. So here we are in the welding supplies, and I know that you probably don't have nut files at home ready to clean up the nut on your Saga guitar. So you might try this. These are called tip cleaners, and it's referenced on the repair page at GuitarAttack.com. These little tip cleaners right here are awfully good to clean up a nut on your Saga guitar. Like you see, they're only $3.98, so that's a pretty good price right there. So, tip cleaners in the welding supply area. So our final product at Lowe's is a coping saw, and this is what we're going to use to cut the headstock out on our guitar. You got to have something that you can cut a really nice curve with, and these work really well. For about $7.80, you can get the saw, and it comes with 3 blades, and that's what we're going to use to cut out the headstock. So we've gotten everything we need at Lowe's. It's time to go home, get to work on our guitar. Now that we have a playable guitar, we have to think about finishing it up, and one of the big decisions you have to make with one of these Saga guitar kits is what the headstock is going to look like. So what I'm going to do is trace the outline of it and do a design study, as it were. And let's see, we'll just take that like that. Take that like that. Get a little bit more tape just to make sure that we can get the outline, and I'll compare it to our other Saga so you can kind of see how it kind of takes place. Use a pencil for this. Never use a Sharpie for this, because if you use a Sharpie, you'll never get it off the wood. Ever. Ever, ever. Now, if you're a minimalist, I suppose you could leave it exactly like this, but most guitar players like to put some kind of design on their guitar headstock. So we have a good representation of what it looks like right there, and we'll take it off and look at it. So now we have a good representation, a good template there that we can scan, or we can just freehand make a little template with some cardboard to figure out what it's going to look like. And like we talked about, we've got a coping saw upstairs that we're going to bring down and use it to cut the headstock out after we disassemble the guitar and let it sit with strings for 24 hours. It's time to do some design work, and the work in this phase is complete. Welcome back. We've had the strings on the guitar for 24 hours. We did some work on the guitar last night. We moved some of the saddles around and we set the action. And we played it through a couple of guitar amps, and it sounds great. It's really coming together well. But the key thing that we learned overnight is the strings were on it, the neck stayed where it was supposed to stay, and there's nothing really more that we need to do on the actual playing part of the guitar. We moved this down. One thing that we did do, we talked a little bit about the tip cleaners, and you might not know what they are. They're actually used in the welding, and you'll find these, like we said yesterday, at Lowe's in the welding section. But they're literally little files that are about the size of a guitar string. And what you can do is pull the string out and actually use this file to lower the slot. And for the money, there's nothing even comes close to it, and it's they work really great. So we highly recommend these to get your strings down, and you can see more about that on GuitarAttack.com. Also, what we did is we took a pencil. Don't take a Sharpie, use a pencil, and we trace the outline of the headstock. We're going to use the shape of the headstock that we had on our other Saga, and you're limited to what the headstock's going to look like based on this curve right here. So, you know, we're not trying to make one that looks exactly like a Fender guitar, because we would never pass one off as a Fender. But you can see right here this curve. Also, we're probably only going to use one string tree on the high B string or high E string and B string right here. This one right here. The kit came with two, but we'll probably only use one, like a real Strat. But other than that, it's a great playing guitar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this apart, take the strings off, take it apart, and our next hard piece of hard work is we're going to use our coping saw that we bought yesterday, and we're going to cut the headstock. Also recommend at this point, take some pictures of the guitar, and it'll help you when you put it back together, and follow the instructions. But if there's any questions, you can always go back to the instructions or hit the GuitarAttack.com website. But always encourage you to take photos. Now we're going to do some of the heavy lifting for the build. One thing that we just need to make sure is that you take the neck off of the body, because I found that sometimes the clamping force will do some damage to it. Just make sure you're clamped and it's steady. Use safety glasses as always. And here we have our coping saw. You use a number of different terms, but what we're going to do is just make some cuts, and we'll use some sandpaper and some rasp and a few files to clean this up. But normally I will start in sections and just start from here and go forward. So we'll do the first cut here. And this does work, trust me. There we go. It's my recommendation never to go all the way to the line, because you want to leave yourself some slack. Got to clean it up a little bit, but that's the first cut. You can see a lot of times that when you do cut, that it's not a straight cut, so you're going to have to clean that up. Alright, you can see here we've got our rough shaped headstock. We did the cutting. We still have to do a little bit of sanding, but it came out pretty well. And it'll give us a really good headstock and something good to finish with. We cleaned up our nut just a little bit with a bigger file, but the tip cleaners really do well with that. Also, before you get started, you can take some of the white steel wool pads and clean the frets up a little bit. Because we're going to shoot a clear finish, we want the finish to go all the way up on the rosewood fingerboard. We're going to wipe it down a little bit, but the first thing that we need to do to get this ready to paint is we need to mask it. Now what's different about masking these is, first, I prefer to use the 3M blue tape, and the reason that is if you have to leave it on the guitar for a little while, it doesn't really seem to make as big a mess as other tapes, and actually it holds very well. But when you start the masking process, make a clean cut on one end and mask all the way up to the edge of the rosewood. And actually you can leave just that end there, but just up to the nut, because you want to make sure you cover the nut up. Then come down the fingerboard and make sure it snugs up all the way up against the fret there. And you can see how it's snug. Just use your finger. If a little bit of the finish gets onto the fingerboard, I'll show you how to clean it off. We normally just use a standard razor blade. And when we get down to the end, use our scissors again. to finish. That's how one side looks. You can see it's all the way up against the edge of the fingerboard. Okay, we've got the neck ready to put some finish on. It's going to look great. Now the body is in pretty good shape too. We're going to hit it just a little bit with a green pad, but this is something I recommend everybody make if you're going to make a few guitars. You can either use a wire coat hanger to hang your body up, which we've used here obviously, or you can make yourself just out of 3 pieces of wood sort of an artificial neck. And what this does is, using 2 neck screws, you just put it right in here and it keeps the paint out of the neck cavity as well. So we're going to go ahead and put this on. We're going to head out to the garage and put just a little bit of paint on both of these. That's just to get some distance between the edges. On this, first. That's all this one. Okay, the paint is dry on our guitar and I think it looks great. You can see here, if we still have the tape on the fingerboard, we're going to go ahead and pull that off. And see, it looks really good. And the tape's still sticky. Looks really good. A couple of things I want to point out, a couple of tips. The paint that you used, take a piece of masking tape, put the date and put the fact that you used it on the Saga Guitar Kit, so if you need to touch up either the neck or the body, you'll know which paint you used. And this paint will last for a while, so a couple of years anyway, so just make sure you keep it in a cool place and it'll be fine, but remember to mark your paint. Second, you can see here, made a real nice big Williams logo on our headstock, and this was done, it was very easy to do. Just used a program on the computer, printed it out, and took it to a local copy shop, not coffee, copy shop, and copied it onto laser decal paper. You can get the laser paper from this place right here. It's called Micromark. They have a really good website, and it's the best decal paper that I've used. It's very simple. You don't have to spray anything on top of it to use it. You cut it out. It's water transfer and put it right on. And you can see here, and after I got it put on the guitar, it's very, very simple. They have instructions on the site. I sprayed it with a couple of coats of the clear lacquer, and it turned out really great. One thing I recommend you do with your decal for your headstock, don't put a Fender decal or a Fender logo or a Charvel or one of the other big guitar companies on here. Make your own. Make it something that people can see. You can see here it's nice and it's a big logo. It's my last name, and this way you can use it and you could really make this guitar your own. But highly can't more strongly recommend that you don't use a guitar company's name on your guitar. One thing about this guitars, we painted it with enamel that we got at Lowe's, and recommend that when you look at it, you'll see maybe a few little defects in it, and it doesn't quite look like what you would see in a high dollar Fender Strat, but it's still pretty fun, still a good looking, really good looking guitar. I recommend that when you do paint this, keep the paint light. Just put light coats on top of it, and that way, if you ever want to paint it again, which I recommend if you have a big show next month or something like that, just get a can of paint out and take it apart and paint it again and make people think that you just bought a new guitar. One thing I do recommend, just using guitar polish like Gibson or Martin guitar polish are about my favorites. I use them quite a bit. One thing I recommend is always use this and don't use furniture polish on your guitar, because if you do use furniture polish, it has silicone in it, and if it gets down in here, it'd make it into the screw holes and make it very, very difficult to refinish, because that stuff is very, very hard to get off a guitar when you want to finish it. If you remember, before we started spraying, we used mineral spirits to get grease and fingerprints and that, various things off of the guitar. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't with furniture polish, so keep that away from the guitar. One thing to remember too, if you don't like your paint job and it didn't turn out like you wanted it to, you can always strip it and start over again. But also another trick, for example, here's the TriStar logo from the Tennessee flag, kind of a red for Tennessee flag. You could always stick a sticker on here. When people look at your guitar, they'll kind of be drawn to that sticker first before the rest of the guitar, and it'll kind of serve to distract. And it's also a pretty good color combination there too. You can see that. So that's just a technique. You could try that. Now we're going to go ahead and put our guitar back together. Okay. What we have is, much like a Stratocaster, you get a lot of really good tones with this. The bridge pickup is very, very trebly, like you would expect. And the neck pickup is very nice. It's very round and bassy, kind of also get the in-between tones like a Stratocaster too. So there you have it, Saga Guitar Kit. Great playing guitar. Would absolutely recommend it to anybody, and it's a great project. So make it your own, customize it, and enjoy it. Have fun. Thanks.